Welcome to Movie Buzz 7. With a hiss of pain from Draka, the continent of Azeroth also welcomed the first orc life. However, the orc baby did not look healthy. The leader, Gul'dan, would never allow the first orc born on Earth to perish here. Therefore, he drained the life force of a deer in front of him with evil energy and then transferred the energy to the orc baby. Durotan also showed a nervous expression. After a loud cry, the baby finally moved away from the brink of death, and these fierce-looking orcs originally did not belong to this world not long ago. The planet Draenor, where the orcs became uninhabitable. As the young chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, Durotan had to trust the powerful warlock Gul'dan and sign an expedition contract to lead his robust clan to follow Gul'dan to a paradise on another planet. On the eve of their departure, Durotan could not stop worrying about his wife Draka, who was about to give birth after a 10-month pregnancy, and his face was filled with concern as if he had made a decision. The next morning, Durotan and his good friend Orgrim, leading their clansmen, arrived at the assembly point to form a powerful orc army with other clans ready to invade the human world. The last group of Draenei on this planet would become the energy source for Gul'dan to open the portal. A female prisoner pleaded with the passing half-orc Corona to spare her child, unaware that this alluring orc was actually of low status, helpless to assist her, and often suffered imprisonment by Gul'dan if it weren't for her proficiency in various languages, serving as Gul'dan's translator. She probably would have been drained of life by Gul'dan long ago to replenish the evil powers. At this moment, Gul'dan was fervently boosting morale with his words, instantly igniting the warrior's longing and desire for a beautiful homeland. Seeing that the time was about right, Gul'dan began to spread his hands and unleash evil powers, instantly draining life from countless Draenei. Amid the despairing cries of the Draenei, the orcs charged toward the gate with increasing excitement. Gul'dan, without reservation, released all the absorbed energy onto the giant portal. As a slightly eerie green glow slowly spread over the entire gate, the vibrant scenery of the new world came into view. The already eager orcs surged forward, swarming into the portal. Due to the limited number of Draenei sacrificed, only a portion of the elite orcs could enter first. However, Durotan, keeping it from everyone, took his weakened wife through the time passage. Just as they stepped into the void, Draka felt a severe pain in her abdomen. It was time to give birth. Durotan, anxious in the void, could not approach to help. After a burst of intense light, they finally set foot on the land of Azeroth, and the tearing pain in her lower body forced Draka to drop her disguise and lie down on the ground to give birth. This scene immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding orcs. The deputy leader of the horde quickly stopped Durotan, intending to hold him accountable for bringing his family into the camp. However, Gul'dan, sensing this might be a good omen, led Durotan off and personally helped Draka deliver the baby, leading to the events at the beginning. Just stepping into Azeroth and witnessing the birth of a new work life undoubtedly greatly boosted the morale of the warriors. However, the story of Warcraft had only just begun. Meanwhile, in the distant dwarf capital of Ironforge, a legendary figure arrived on behalf of the human king of Stormwind, the human commander Anduin Lothar. King Magni even presented him with a newly developed rifle as a mark of respect. Just as King Magni was about to demonstrate the rifle, a dwarf hurried toward him with urgent frontline intelligence. After reading the letter, Anduin Lothar sensed trouble and immediately rushed back to Stormwind to investigate. It turned out that a human garrison had been mysteriously attacked, completely annihilated. The first to discover the corpses of the garrison was Khadgar, who stood before him. Anduin Lothar, without hesitation, used a silent skill to probe the stranger, only believing he was not an enemy after seeing the violet eye on the man's arm. Khadgar quickly explained that he was a magic intern who had abandoned the Guardian's oath to become a ranger, wandering the world, which led him to accidentally discover the attacked soldiers' bodies. The peculiar state of the corpses made Khadgar suspect something extraordinary. The sight before them was indeed shocking. The corpse, drained of its essence, had an eerie countenance and exhaled an evil green breath, making it a difficult case for Khadgar. Despite his experience as a magic intern, Khadgar could not determine what kind of creature was responsible. The only option was to summon the human guardian, Mativ, who might have answers. However, only the king had the authority to summon someone, one as significant as the guardian. Thus, Anduin Lothar and Khadgar hurried to the capital to find King Lane Rin, seeing the severely damaged garrison shield. Lane Rin's expression also turned grave, indicating that he had not been in contact with the guardian for many years. As they spoke, fire blazed up in the Elwyn forest outside the city, clearly indicating that an unknown enemy was nearly at their doorstep. With no time to think further, Lane Rin quickly handed a token to Anduin Lothar, instructing him to try his luck at Medivh's ancestral home, Karazhan, in the hope of finding Mativ. And now that it's urgent, only the Royal Griffin can get them to their destination as quickly and safely as possible with the help of their flying mounts. What would have been a 3-day journey by horse took 2. One day, and they arrived at the enchanting Karazhan. Unexpectedly, Medivh seemed to have anticipated their arrival, having had his old butler waiting outside for a long time. Soon, Anduin Lothar was able to meet Medivh, who was carving an arcane statue. After a brief exchange and presenting Lane Rin's token, Lothar successfully convinced the Guardian to come out of retirement. Meanwhile, Khadgar, who was waiting in the library, suddenly saw a ghostly undead figure flash by when he approached to investigate. Puzzled, he found nothing. Instead, a magical tome caught his attention, seemingly drawing him in. The rune of Daleran on Khadgar's arm flashed, guiding him to pull out this well-known tome of Medivh from amongst thousands of books. However, Medivh seemed to have little regard for this in turn, who had abandoned his guardian oath. Upon meeting, he magically pinned Khadgar against the wall. After briefly teasing Khadgar, Medivh released him. The griffins are no longer needed for the return journey. With a casual wave of his arm, Medivh created a portal shimmering with blue magic, and in the next second, the 3 of them vanished. Back in Stormwind City, miles away, the 3 appeared in a flash, startling the palace guards who quickly drew their weapons in alarm. Lane Rin, seeing familiar faces, was immediately delighted, clearly reassured by the Guardian's presence without even pausing for pleasantries. They began analyzing the situation due to the cryptic information gleaned from the fallen soldiers' corpses. Knowing very little about the enemy they were about to face, under Medivh's protection, they quickly went to the ambush site for a detailed investigation. The surrounding environment was a scene of devastation, with fresh bloodstains still visible, indicating that the skirmish had occurred not long ago. The still burning fell on the trees heightened their vigilance. It was clear the enemy was still nearby. In a panic, everyone hastily grabbed their weapons and prepared for battle. Black Hand, already hidden in the trees, suddenly down, wreaking havoc at his command. Countless orcs burst from the bushes and launched a merciless attack on the humans. In the face of the orcs' superior size and strength, the human soldiers were overwhelmed in moments. Suffering heavy casualties, only Anduin Lothar managed to hold his own amidst the enemy ranks. Undeterred, Black Hand became even more ferocious, lifting a warhorse and throwing it at the guards. This act spurred his followers to let out raucous laughter, thrilled by their leader's brute strength. On the other side, Khadgar quickly used his magic to repel the enemy and then raised a protective shield to block Durotan's attack, buying time for Medivh to chant his spells. However, due to the long preparation time required for his skills and facing a ferocious orc with fierce tusks, a sense of inevitable defeat began to take shape among the enemies. Anduin Lothar's son was in grave danger, and it was only thanks to Anduin Lothar's timely intervention that he was saved. But this also left Anduin vulnerable. He was thrown by the enemy commander, and his sword fell to the ground, facing the enemy's relentless advance. Anduin Lothar. Khadgar picked up the rifle gifted by King Magni and was shocked by its immense power. At this moment, Medivh's powerful magic was finally complete, and a network of interlacing lightning accurately struck a large number of orcs nearby. The magical effect was remarkably similar to the fell energy used by Gul'dan, instantly draining life from countless orcs, leaving only desiccated husks. Black Hand, knowing the terror of such evil magic, decisively organized the survivors to quickly withdraw from the battlefield after casting the spell. Medivh felt something unusual in his body, and Khadgar also realized that the power used was not typical of the Guardian. Before he could ask further, Medivh snatched the staff and hastily opened a teleportation spell, disappearing in an instant amidst the puzzled looks of those around him. The battle continued, and the humans needed to capture an orc for interrogation to understand the enemy's structure. Anduin Lothar immediately led his battered troops into the dense forest to pursue. During the escape, the Rotan of the Frostwolf clan freed the half-orc Arona by cutting her chains. In line with the Orcish pride of never being slaves, the monsters decided to stand their ground, commanding the fierce beasts to start sniping. At this point, a lone orc is caught by the oncoming Anduin Lothar, who in turn uses his warhorse to kick the orc to the ground, and then quickly steps forward to knock him out with a punch. As Anduin Lothar prepares to gather his captives, the orc's warwolf mounts suddenly appear and try to protect their master. Seeing this, Anduin Lothar drew his sword and threatened the life of the Borg's master. "How much do you love your master?" And the beast, showing a human side, had no choice but to roar twice and reluctantly leave to ensure its master's safety. Meanwhile, the newly freed half-orc Corona, in a frantic escape, ran into Khadgar, who immediately pinned her against a tree. After surviving a near-death experience, the group had finally completed their reconnaissance mission. They hurriedly escorted Garona and another orc back to Stormwind City. On the way, they discovered that Garona could speak the human language, which incited anger among the other orcs. Despite being advised against it, Garona continued to communicate with humans, infuriating the orc who suddenly burst with strength, breaking free from his chains. Fortunately, Anduin Lothar intervened just in time, stopping him from further actions. Soon after, Gerona was brought before Lane Rin for interrogation. Like a newborn calf, she was full of curiosity about her surroundings. Lane Rin, eager to extract information, allowed her to express her naive and untamed nature before pointing to the world map on the Great Hall ceiling, asking her to identify where the Orcs came from. Gerona cooperated, revealing that the Orcs were not from this world. They had arrived through a portal created by the evil warlock Gul'dan, aiming to conquer the continent of Azeroth. By now, many humans had been captured near the portal. Ready to be sacrificed by Gul'dan to reopen the gateway, Gerona had learned the human language from these captives, seeing her not as an enemy. Lane Rin promised that if Gerona helped the army locate the Orc stronghold, she would be granted the freedom to enjoy life in the human world. Hearing this, Gerona outwardly remained calm, but inside she was overwhelmed with emotions, as she had always been ostracized by the Horde and imprisoned by Gul'dan. Freedom was a distant dream she had never dared to hope for, despite her tragic past. Gerona, now a prisoner, was hesitant to trust Lane Rin's mere words. It was only when the empathetic queen entered the prison unguarded, warmly inquiring about her well-being and even trusting her enough to give her a royal dagger for self-defense, that Corona felt respected for the first time and began to believe in the sincerity of humans. The scene shifts to the injured Blackhand and Durotan, who return to their clan at night, only to be indiscriminately rebuked by their leader Gul'dan. Dissatisfied with Blackhand's Orc squad's performance in the Elwyn Forest, Gul'dan was quick to call for a public trial to make an example of him. Although reluctant, Blackhand placed his hand into the green flames, waiting for death to engulf him. The other Orcs were clearly dissatisfied with this brutal method, but none dared oppose Gul'dan. Only Durotan had the courage to step forward at the critical moment. Unwilling to offend the evil Gul'dan, yet unable to bear watching his old comrade die in such a humiliating way, and intervened. Durotan argued that their union of tribes was merely for survival, even if war was inevitable. They should not turn on each other or use evil powers to kill innocents. Seeing the potential for a massive backlash, Gul'dan dared not go too far and, while appearing to relent, was already plotting how to eliminate Durotan. Back with his Frostwolf clan, Durotan felt increasingly uneasy, knowing he had offended Gul'dan and would likely face severe retaliation, potentially turning his people into sacrificial victims for fell magic. His home planet of Draenor had been destroyed by Gul'dan's reckless use of evil powers. Rather than wait passively for doom, Durotan decided to take action. Early the next morning, he met with his close brother Wargrim to start planning their resistance. This extremely heartwarming scene has evoked many memories of youth for World of Warcraft players. Once upon a time, we sat together, embodying legends in the world of Warcraft, commanding respect far and wide. But in the blink of an eye, we faced the reality and challenges of life alone, with the first wave of Orcs passing through the portal into Azeroth. They successfully captured Menethil Harbor in the wetlands and Stromgarde Keep in the Earthy Highlands, securing a foothold for the newly arrived Orc horde in this unfamiliar world. However, many actions during the invasion deeply conflicted with Durotan's principles. His comrades, under Gul'dan's leadership, engaged in burning, killing, and looting, treating human girls with cruelty, gradually losing the Orcs' honor and original intentions. What worried him more was that wherever Gul'dan went, the area would turn into a desolate place, devoid of all life. To firmly establish themselves in their new home, it was essential to stop Gul'dan's malicious actions. Durotan told his close brother Orgrim that he had a plan, which was to ally with humans to eliminate Gul'dan, allowing the Orc horde to be recognized in this world. Meanwhile, Gerona led a human scout team to the Orc assembly area secretly. Anduin Lothar then discovered that a large number of humans had been captured by the Orcs. Gerona further revealed that Gul'dan would drain these people's lives in 2 days to reopen the portal. At that time, the remaining Orcs on the planet Draenor would be transferred to the continent of Azeroth. With this crucial information, Anduin Lothar hurried back to report to Lane Rin. After a long wait, Durotan finally saw his opportunity. He quickly covered Khadgar's mouth to prevent him from chanting spells. Then, he shared his plan totally with the humans against Gul'dan with Gerona. For the sake of the Horde, Gerona rushed back to Stormwind to facilitate an alliance. The king finally decided to meet Durotan at Blackrock Pass to discuss the details of their cooperation. Accompanied by his close brother Orgrim, Durotan waited with the men of the Frostwolf clan for the meeting with the human army. For safety, he had Orgrim patrol around the canyon. Meanwhile, the human guardian Madiv also struggled to suppress the demon within him, standing at the highest point of the canyon to ensure that no harm would come to Lane Rin, with Gerona translating. The two sides quickly reached an agreement. Just as the once opposing sides were about to make a pledge to unite against Gul'dan, an unexpected event occurred. Gul'dan, having somehow received news, had already set up an ambush nearby, and the newly formed alliance suddenly faced imminent danger. Facing the extremely resentful eyes of the humans, Durotan found himself unable to explain, only striving to fend off the attacking enemies to demonstrate his stance. The human legion took the opportunity to retreat quickly, but the road ahead was filled with ambushes. They were trapped like fish in a barrel with nowhere to escape. Surrounded on all sides, even their warhorses were overturned, and both armies immediately plunged into a fierce melee at this moment. Fierce Wolf's howl caught everyone's attention and was clear that Orgrim had tipped off Gul'dan about the meeting. As Garona was distracted, Khadgar used magic to save her. Lane Rin led by example, fighting bloodily, while the half-orc Garona vented her humiliation on her fellow tribespeople. This scene infuriated Blackhand so much that he leaped into the battlefield. Anduin Lothar's son immediately ordered the guards to change to a defensive formation, preparing to meet the enemy. With a roar of anger from Blackhand, the orc ambushers no longer held back and launched a full assault to swiftly end the battle. At the peak of the canyon, the Guardian Medivh finally completed his prolonged magical chant, unleashing an extremely powerful burst of elemental energy from the center. Using his body as a conduit, he channeled 1,000 divine thunders into the canyon, exploded amidst thunder and lightning, creating an impassable barrier that split the battlefield. Lane Rin took the opportunity to quickly order a retreat, while Anduin Lothar chose to stay behind to cover the withdrawal. It was only when he looked back that he realized his son had been isolated on the orc side of the barrier. He hysterically called out to Medivh to dissolve the barrier, but received no response. His son, now alone and in dire straits, faced imminent danger. Ignoring the intense pain from the magical lightning, Anduin tried to reach out to him, only to be repelled by the barrier. Desperate, Anduin Lothar picked up a shield from the ground, attempting to break through the barrier to rescue his son. Watching his son being attacked by orcs, his eyes filled with urgency, he exerted all his strength. But reality defeated Anduin Lothar once again, as the fearsome Blackhand was about to kill his flesh and blood. Anduin Lothar's eyes pleaded for mercy. However, the orcs, devoid of any compassion, hesitated not a moment before their claws pierced through Anduin Lothar's son. Then, as if discarding a small chick, they carelessly the body in front of Anduin Lothar, so close, yet powerless to prevent his kin's death. He could only watch helplessly. Anduin Lothar trembled all over, his breathing seemingly halted. He looked across at his lifelong enemy, who taunted him with a challenging stare, and a surge of boundless rage filled him. History would one day repay this grievous enmity. Meanwhile, the people who had retreated to the mountaintop discovered that Medivh, overwhelmed by magical overload, had already collapsed on the spot. Naturally unable to hear Anduin Lothar's cries, they quickly took the unconscious Medivh back to Karazhan, placing him in a magic spring for treatment. As he lay weakened, the demonic entity inside Medivh began to reveal itself. Khadgar recognized the signs of evil power's corruption at a glance. Feeling helpless, immediately ride the royal griffin to Dalaran, the mage sanctuary, for a solution. Meanwhile, Medivh struggled to maintain consciousness and teleported Gornal away. Back in Stormwind, she saw Anduin Lothar, overwhelmed with grief, and felt an unexpected pang of empathy. At that moment, she wished to use her own affection to soothe the pain in Anduin Lothar's heart. As Durotan returned to the Orc Horde, he was immediately apprehended by Blackhand on charges of treason. On the other side, Gul'dan called Orgrim to his side, ostensibly praising him for exposing Durotan's betrayal, but in reality, it was a diversion. He had already sent his minions to besiege the leaderless Frostwolf clan, determined to make these innocent people pay a painful price for Durotan's mistakes. Orgrim finally realized that he had been used by Gul'dan and hurried back to the camp to fight against the invading orcs. He had not understood why Durotan wanted to ally with humans against Gul'dan, but now he recognized his own grave mistake. Gul'dan's selfishness and tyranny knew no bounds, and it was only a matter of time before he led the orc clans to destruction. After rescuing Durotan's wife and children, Orgrim quickly made his way to the place where Durotan was imprisoned. He easily took out the guards outside and opened the cage. Filled with guilt, Orgrim could hardly look at the brother who had once trusted him. He silently untied Durotan and pulled him up, bracing himself for the expected reproach. However, Durotan, in a true man's fashion, chose to forgive him without blame. Accepting Orgrim's newfound realization, Durotan then declared his decision to challenge Gul'dan in a battle of honor. Meanwhile, Khadgar, with the help of a griffin, arrived in Dalaran. At first, the archmages on the high tower were not welcoming to a lower-ranked magic apprentice. It was only when Khadgar revealed the impending betrayal of the Guardian Medivh that the archmage led into the Aladi Guardian Cube. Immediately, Khadgar was called by an ancient ritual and the mysterious shadow that had appeared in the library of Karazhan. Aladi spoke to him. Khadgar learned from Aladi that Gul'dan had been able to precisely locate Azeroth in the vast universe because of Medivh's secret guidance. Medivh had been seeded with evil powers during a journey. Khadgar then received the secrets of Medivh's book and methods to counter Medivh. By this time, Madiv was extremely weak and with the help of his old steward, returned to the magic pool to resist the evil powers. Unexpectedly, the next second, the entire magic pool emitted a strange green light, signifying that the evil powers had completely taken over Madiva's body. Even the old steward who had been with him day and night was drained of life by the corrupted Madiv. Madiv then acted as if nothing had happened and returned to Lane Rin's palace to sow discord. As expected, Benjuin Lothar, seeing the man who caused his son's death, was furious. Lane Rin had no choice but to throw the volatile human commander into the dungeon to cool off. Madiv took this opportunity to persuade Lane Rin to lead an attack on the orc stronghold himself, essentially leading him into a trap. Amidst all the orcs, Durotan publicly challenged the chieftain Gul'dan to a duel of honor, leaving Gul'dan no reason to refuse. Such challenges hold high significance among Orcish tribes. Declining to fight would bring disgrace and weaken one's influence among the clans, Gul'dan revealed, terrifying bone spurs on his back, his presence chilling. Yet Durotan, fierce-eyed and fearless, stripped off his war robe and charged forward. Clearly, in hand-to-hand combat, the warlock Gul'dan was no match for Durotan. After several rounds, Gul'dan was visibly faltering. In a bout of pain, Gul'dan erupted with a burst of power, instinctively wanting to use evil powers to end the fight quickly. However, honor is paramount in Orcish duels, and for the sake of his reputation, he restrained himself, yet this restraint meant certain defeat. In a quick-witted move, Gul'dan tried to claim that the time to open the portal had arrived as an excuse to break off the duel. Unexpectedly, Blackhand, serving as the referee and usually obedient to Gul'dan, denied him after only a second's thought. The typically compliant lieutenant held firm in the face of Orcish honor. Once a duel begins, it must end only when one party is downed. Cornered Gul'dan no longer held back and blatantly used evil powers to drain a significant amount of Durotan's vitality. This action sparked immediate disdain and outrage among the watching orcs. Yet, fearing Gul'dan's evil powers, they dared not intervene. Durotan showed no signs of surrender. Even with his last breath, he fought on. Seeing this, Gul'dan showed no mercy and let Durotan lose his life completely. Witnessing such a fight, some orcs, unwilling to follow a despicable leader like Gul'dan, chose to leave the horde. However, before they could take a few steps, Gul'dan instantly killed them. Then, he transferred the energy he had absorbed to Blackhand, mixing grace and tyranny to ensure no further betrayals. The orc warriors, now filled with fervor, prepared to storm the human world and destroy everything. Meanwhile, the human legion, led by King Lane Rin, had entered the orc stronghold. At Lane Rin's command, all troops charged towards their target. The horde sentinels, alarmed, immediately sounded their horns, and a massive number of orcs swiftly emerged to meet the enemy. Although the orcs were fit and strong in battle, the soldiers of Stormwind managed to hold off the orcs with the help of King Magni rifles, supported by legendary units. The battle was fiercely contested, with no clear victor emerging in the immediate fray. Seeing the human forces in disarray, Gul'dan quickly drained the life from human captives to reopen the celestial portal. Countless orc warriors swarmed through from the planet Draenor, plunging the humans into a dire situation of being attacked from both front and back. Simultaneously, Khadgar, having returned from Dalaran, hastened to Stormwind and rescued Anduin Lothar from the dungeon. Now proficient patient in his skills, he drew a circle with a piece of black charcoal on the ground, attempting his first teleportation spell. Despite Anduin Lothar's skeptical look, the next second saw them both instantly transported to Karazhan. Khadgar understood that only by dealing with Mediv could they permanently disrupt Gul'dan's portal guidance. However, in a direct confrontation, they were slightly outmatched, unable to move Mediv, especially given his control over arcane constructs. During an evasion, Anduin Lothar noticed that the constructs stiffened immediately upon contact with evil powers. Seeing this, Khadgar quickly set up a magic circle, planning to use the arcane constructs to subdue Mediv. Anduin Lothar skillfully drew Madiva's attention and, unexpectedly, was flung across to the opposite side of a magical stone. Continuing his relentless taunting, he successfully enraged Mediv and lured him into the magic stone, inadvertently allowing him to absorb more energy and transform into Sargeras, significantly increasing his power. At this critical moment, Khadgar seized the opportunity to use teleportation magic, moving the arcane construct soaked in evil powers directly above the magic stone. The construct stiffened, pinning Mediv down, and the celestial portal above the battlefield, having lost its directional guidance, was forcibly closed. The human army finally got a chance to breathe and hurry to rescue the captives. However, as the teleportation circle was activated, Khadgar too was transferred into the magic stone, his body and will quickly eroded by the evil powers. Before losing his sanity, Khadgar released a shield to ensure Anduin Lothar's safety. Then, placing his hand on Madiva's forehead, he transferred all the evil powers from Madiva to himself while reciting a spell he had learned in Dalaran. Khadgar succeeded, converting and purging all the absorbed evil powers. The released energy formed a powerful shockwave that exploded from Karazhan as its epicenter. Once Anduin Lothar confirmed that Khadgar was unharmed, he quickly grabbed a sword from the ground and, without even putting on his shoes, leapt out of the window. The royal griffin, who had been waiting for him, would take him swiftly to the battlefield. Meanwhile, Madiv, now regaining consciousness, was nearing the end of his life. However, he wished to fulfill his duties as a guardian. In one last time, seeking to atone for his past transgressions, Storm City, Storm City. As these words came out of his mouth with great difficulty, the starfield portal on the distant battlefield revealed the site of Stormwind City, giving Lane Rin, who was trapped in the enemy camp, hope for survival. Inspired, the human warriors rallied fiercely around the portal, expending their last reserves of ammunition on the blocking orcs, quickly seizing control of the portal. Lane Rin courageously remained on the front line, instructing his soldiers to prioritize the rescue of human captives. However, their time was running short as Madiv was on the brink of exhaustion. As a large number of orcs converged on the portal, the human soldiers valiantly formed a human shield, sacrificing their lives to cover the retreat of the last groups of civilians. Despite the relentless assault on the portal's energy door, Madiv couldn't hold on any longer. His eyes, once bright with magical light, dimmed as he passed away with a burden of guilt, forever leaving the continent of Azeroth. The portal collapsed in the next second, sealing the fate of the few civilians who couldn't make it through, facing certain death at the hands of the orcs. Amidst the chaos, Lane Rin, devoted to his people, missed the optimal window to retreat. Blackhand, revitalized from his evil transformation, charged at Lane Rin in a desperate attempt to seize glory. Knowing his end was near, Lane Rin preferred to be killed by the half-orc Garona, hoping to elevate her status among the orcs and perhaps forge a peace between the races in a heartbreaking moment. Garona, though reluctant, ended Lane Rin's life. As Blackhand watched in shock, the orcs, recognizing Garona's deed, lifted her in celebration and brought her before Gul'dan to receive her reward. This once marginalized half-orc thus earned honor and acclaim. As Blackhand furiously moved to desecrate Lane Rin's body, Anduin Lothar arrived just in time, descending from the sky like a warrior deity, quickly dispatching the surrounding orcs. He retrieved Lane Rin's body, determined to bring it back to Stormwind for a proper burial. As he prepared to leave on a griffin, Hand grabbed his leg, unwilling to let go of the glory of killing the human leader. In this moment, both were equally eager for a final showdown, seeing his opponent challenge him to a duel of honor. Anduin Lothar decisively picks up his weapon and accepts the challenge. His own son had died at the hands of this opponent, and now the death of his good friend Lane Rin is vividly before his eyes. The fateful battle begins immediately. With no fancy moves involved, Anduin Lothar ends the fight with a single move. Anduin Lothar gives Garona a meaningful look, gathers his heavy emotions, and slowly walks toward the griffin. Upon seeing this, Gul'dan orders the surrounding orcs to kill him, but having betrayed the orcs on her several times, his prestige has greatly diminished. Even Garona dares to stand up and stop him. The orcs, who traditionally respect dueling, do not intervene. They not only make way for the victor, but also show their respect for the strong. Anduin Lothar mounts the griffin unimpeded, heated, and finally fulfills his wish, bringing Lane Rin's body back to Stormland. Orgrim honors the last wish of his good friend Durotan, pulls out Durotan's tusk, and prepares to give it to his son, the young orc, symbolizing the passing on of will. Meanwhile, Gul'dan begins to significantly purge Durotan's forces. Draka, finding herself cornered and knowing her chances are slim, places the young orc into the river, letting him drift away in search of hope. She then leaps up to block the pursuers sent by Gul'dan. After a desperate fight and biting, she manages to eliminate the enemy, only to find that she has already been fatally wounded by a blade collapsing breathlessly on the bank. Her eyes filled with unwillingness, also brim with endless reluctance for the young orc. The young orc drifts along the river and is eventually rescued by a mysterious person. The story of the world of Warcraft is just beginning. Movie Buzz 7. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.